they're high priority, but they also have the side effect of making swarmers and range guys even more threatening. So, and then we have a bunch of one-offs that are just kind of cool ideas we have. I'm not going to explain what all these are. I just thought you'd have fun debating the names on the forums, because we come up with a lot of crazy names. So, spreadsheet, yeah, because we really wanted this presentation to be exciting. So, spreadsheets are not just the tools of bean counters. If there's any kids in the audience, learn your math if you want to work in video games. It's important. So we use spreadsheets, this spreadsheet in particular, we call it the monster progression spreadsheet, and every one of these colored bars is a different area, and it just kind of shows how we plan our monsters from area to area. And when we do that, we look at shape, color, and archetypes, and we make sure that we have a good mix in each one, and that each one complements. And then as we move from area to area, we're also introducing new challenges and new monster types at a really good rate, and this is our tool to do that.
I'm going to walk you through the monster pipeline that we use. It's basically the process by which a monster gets into the game. The first step is to start with a concept, and the concept can really come from anywhere. It can come from somebody on the team who went on vacation to Hawaii and saw something interesting and had a monster idea visually. It could come from, someone played through the latest level environment and they said, this desert environment really is lacking in, a particular, a wasp. Or it could come from someone who just has a mechanical idea. This sketch comes from Carl Lavoie on our team, who said, "I really want a monster that will just leap off of walls. I don't care if it's what kind of monster it is. I just want it to leap off of the wall. I think that'd be a fun mechanic to play with." And so the initial idea comes from anyone on the team and from anywhere. Once we have that initial idea, we need to flesh it out. So we'll start with that initial concept and flesh out all the other details about what that monster might involve. All this is done on paper. It's very multidisciplinary to try and just flesh out and make sure everyone has a picture of where we're going. After we have that, we're going to do a very rough art pass on it. We don't want to spend too much time on the animations because maybe the abilities might change. We don't want to spend too much time on the look because we haven't seen it in the game yet. So this is just enough to get a prototype into the game as quickly as possible. The next step is to actually hook it up and give it some of its basic abilities. Again, this is a rough pass. The goal is to prototype the monster. Jay mentioned the archetypes. You've got your spawners and your swarmers and your range, and we're just trying to just get the rough brush strokes in to try and figure out whether or not this monster is going to be fun. We drop them into the level, and this is our first time that we actually get to see how the monster looks in the game. This is a very important step. This is where we might actually do a little bit of back and forth. This is a chance where we've had a chance to see how does the monster look, behave, and interact. How does it look against the environment? How does it behave with the creatures and with the player? And how does it interact with the groups that it's been spawned with? If we're happy with it at this point, then that's when we start looking at doing the more detailed polish. We're going to look at giving it new abilities. Maybe we like most of a monster, but we really want it to be able to burrow underground as well, and so we'll add that. Or maybe we want the rare version to be the ever so loved lightning enchanted variety, and so this is where we flesh out the details. And then finally, when we're happy with that, is the monster creation process is the final art. So now the animators can polish up the animation now that they know exactly how fast it's going to move. Or the artist can make the texture variants for the various difficulty levels for other versions of the monster later on.
All right, now that we've heard how we create monsters or the process we use, let's talk about specific monsters. The sand wasp is a natural creature. It's not demonic. We wanted to showcase it because it's interesting in that it kind of shows that the world of Sanctuary or the world of Diablo is a very dangerous place on its own. It doesn't need demons to kill you. It plays a support role. This is a swarming creature, like Jay and Wyatt were talking about. This is a creature that is not very tough on its own. It's very much used in conjunction with other creatures. If you find this creature by itself, you just kill it. It's not really a problem, but when you get a bunch of them together, you get what we call the bullet hell effect, which is a slow-moving wall of damage or death. It's very hard to deal with. They're also very handy or very deadly when they're supporting any other creatures, you know, because they're just throwing these flying barbs at you while you're trying to fight some other melee creature or something. Do you want me to just control it? Or? Yeah. And now Julian's going to talk about how he did the effects.
So yeah, we really wanted to support where design was coming from in terms of this bullet hell idea. So we started by, just with the rapid fire attack idea, we started with a whole lot of different kinds of projectiles. And none of them really kind of stuck for one reason or another. And then we got this idea, well, where does this skill really come from? And the other thing it's really trying to evoke is this old-timey arcade action idea. And so we hit on this idea, well, what if the sand wasp actually birthed other little mini wasps that flew at you? That would be really cool, and it would really support where we're coming from. And of course, we got that into the game, and the team didn't quite understand where we were coming from. So I was like, well, you know, how can we communicate, even to the rest of the team, exactly what we're trying to get across and why this is such a cool thing? So we came up with this. The best way to do this is with graphics. So I came up with this little demonstration, again, that says everything, I think. So here's your player, and you can get used to the controls first. You just need something to attack. There is a boss. And the boss is brutally hard.
All right, next we went to the Fallen family because you can't have Diablo without the Fallen. These are the classic Diablo demons. A little bit of background on them. They used to be these exalted demons that were Azmodan's right hand. Before the Dark Exile, which is when Mephisto, Baal, and Diablo were exiled to Sanctuary, they tried, Azmodan and Belial tried once before to do this, and the Fallen in their previous state were the instruments they used to try to get this thing done. When they failed, Diablo turned them into their present impish, comical state, and that's how they've existed since then. Now they're kind of freelance. They don't work for any particular demon. They're just kind of equal opportunity demons who work for everybody. One of the things that we really loved about them, and this is, once again, we're reinforcing that idea of the different creatures working together, is their family relationships. And the classic family relationship, of course, in the Fallen family is the shaman and the imp, which is not going to play for us. But you've all seen it. The shaman resurrects the imp and throws fireballs. We upgraded their look, obviously. But that's where we took as a starting point for this. You know, when you run in, the first thing, of course, you want to do is head straight for the shaman, or he's just going to keep, you know, resurrecting all the imps that you kill. So the next thing we did was have videos that don't work on any of these. Are they working over there? They're working on the screen. I don't know what to do with that. Well, we'll just continue forward. So we made the Fallen Overseer. He's basically a bigger version of the imp. He's stronger, but he has a battle cry. And what's interesting about this is when he appears with a group of fallen imps, he makes them braver. If you recall in Diablo 2, the imps had a tendency to run away in fear when you killed one of them. When the Overseer shouts his battle cry, they get braver and they get tougher. They have less of a tendency to run away, and they're a little bit more difficult to kill. The Fallen Overseer himself is actually a little bit tough. He has this big wind-up and hit that does a lot of damage. So this was one new relationship, and I'm going to be really upset if this one doesn't play. I am going to cry now, because the Fallen Lunatic is awesome. He is the black sheep of the family, if you can imagine such a thing for demons. He's a living bomb. He runs at you and stabs himself in the stomach until he explodes. And if that sounds cool, you can imagine how it looks. I'm sure we'll put this up somewhere where you guys can see it. I apologize. But so anyways, It's really funny until you're surrounded by a group of fallen and low on health, and this guy comes running in and stabs himself and explodes and kills you. Over to the Dune Thresher.
All right, so we've shown you a lot of monsters that we think have turned out really well, and now I'm going to talk about one that we like but think could really be better, and we consider to be a work in progress. So we call him the Dune Thresher, internal name Sand Shark. Those of you who've seen the movie Tremors probably get the idea of this monster, or at least our original idea for him, which was, that if you haven't seen the movie, it's really cool. It's a horror movie where there's these bunch of crazy carnivorous giant worms that live under the desert, and if you stand on sand, they eat you, and if you stand on rock, they can't get to you. So we really liked this idea because we liked the notion that the desert sand would feel really dangerous to the player and not just something they just want to run willy-nilly out onto. But this guy was really kind of a prime example of the difficulty of a more complex idea in a game like Diablo. And we'll show you kind of what our desired result was. So as I mentioned, we wanted to get this feeling that the sand wasn't safe. We wanted to have the Dune Thresher submerge only when he was on sand. If he was on any other surface like road or rock, he could not submerge and couldn't burrow under it. So when he's submerged, he would be completely invulnerable, but when he's above ground, that's when he's actually able to be attacked and you can hurt him. And then we were going to let him actually attack you from under the sand, which means he could attack you at a point when you couldn't hurt him, which again would make him, the idea was to really get the player to play more tactically so that when they ran into this guy, they have to move over to kind of a rock outcrop or a road to try and get him to surface so they can attack him. So the actual result, which I'm going to guess won't play, there you go. At least it's predictable in its inconsistency. Players confused whenever the Dune Thresher was submerged, they just didn't see him. He had this cool fin that would stick out of the ground, but with all the effects and demons and all that crazy stuff going on, you just couldn't see it. So we tried to play up his attack when he was underground, but it just looked kind of silly. We had him diving kind of through, and it was very confusing. Like, is he above ground now or is he not? And then once players kind of finally did figure out how he worked, they didn't play more tactically. They just ignored him. They were like, oh, well, I can just go to the next screen where there's 100 other monsters and I'll kill them instead and just ignore that dude. So it didn't actually work. So we have a fix, which was to make the Dune Thresher more of a hunter. And so again, to play up that idea of a shark. And so the idea was that when he's submerged, he moves really fast, and that this is his way to catch the player. So the Dune Thresher, when he's distant from you, he goes underground and he just starts making a beeline for you. And then he can't attack from underground anymore, but this solves the problem of if players couldn't see him, because now he jumps up above ground, he's totally vulnerable, and you can attack him back. So it's a pretty cool character. We're pretty happy with him, but he's especially against ranged characters, but we still have never gotten that dream that we originally had of having this character that interacted with the environment. So there's a chance that we'll come back to him. All right, so we've got a couple little bloopers for you. We have a lot of stuff as we go through development that kind of goes wrong and haywire, and we thought it'd be fun to show you a couple of those. This actually wasn't. This was for internal. When we showed, first time we showed these characters off to the company, we just wanted to make them laugh. So this is one of the quests. Varna has been poisoned. She's not doing very well. She's supposed to stop now, but she didn't. Even when she died, she didn't. Yeah, it wasn't good. Something wrong with her. We're not quite sure what this is. But we do recommend you stay away from it. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and I think we have some time for some Q&A. Thank you.
All right. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so I just want to remind everybody that we have an